Hi everyone, my name is Holly. In addition to being a psychology major and also taking neuropsych, I am a double degree with cello performance. So I thought what would be a neat thing to do would be to combine the concepts that I've been learning in neuropsych with my own musical training and day-to-day practice. So in this video, I'm going to take you through a typical practice session for me, a few minutes or so, and outline aspects of the brain that are functioning during this practice session. The research for music in the brain, and especially musical training in the brain, is pretty new. So there's a lot of things that are unknown or some holes here and there, but it's definitely a research that is up and coming and very exciting. Certainly, one aspect of playing a musical instrument is developing a good ear. Musicians not only need to be able to recognize pitches, rhythms, melodies, but also just to have a good sense of intonation in order to tell when you're out of tune and how to fix that so that you can play in tune. A lot of this practice is strengthening my primary auditory cortex, or Heschel's gyrus. This is involved again with auditory processing in being able to recognize what I'm playing and being able to comprehend is what is coming out from my playing what I want, or do I need to fix it? So I'm going to take a couple measures from this concerto that I'm learning and demonstrate to you how I would fix this passage according to what I hear, and to train my ear to get what I want out of it. So that passage, while it may look pretty simple, is difficult to play in tune because it's a very awkward passage, the spacing for the fingers and where exactly the notes fit within the hand. So this is a passage that I always check for intonation. And the way that I check to make sure that I'm playing in tune is checking with my open strings. So I have an open D string, an open G string, and an open C string. So these strings, they're non-negotiable. The pitch will never change. So I can check whatever note I am fingering with these open strings, and according to the interval that those notes make, I can tell if I'm playing in tune, if I'm getting the resonance that I want out of my cello, or if I'm playing out of tune and that I need to slightly adjust in order to make sure that note is in tune. So just to walk through how I would do this, so I start from the beginning. So here I can check my G with my open D to get that perfect fourth relationship. And training my ear, or my Heschel's gyrus, to recognize that this pitch is in tune. Checking those notes with my open strings, again, helps me to make sure that the interval is good, that where I'm hitting the note is right in the center of the pitch, and so that when I play without the open strings, I'm getting the full resonance that I want out of my cello, which is telling me that the pitch is good and it's in tune, and I can keep going. Another aspect of musical playing that one wouldn't think of right away, but certainly you need it to play a musical instrument, is motor control. So this would be found in our primary motor cortex, or our precentral gyrus within our frontal lobe. So this is responsible in terms of my playing for helping me to control large gross motor movements, but then also have fine motor control. like very clear, concise movements. So I'm going to take a passage in my concerto towards the beginning where I have to definitely use my whole bow and to do this motion continuously. So to execute this, I will section off the chords one by one to make sure that the first chord I get is how I want my arm to move. And then to set up again to develop all the time with music, I'm developing a muscle memory of how I want my body to feel while I'm playing this piece, while I play any piece. So I want to do that again, to use my whole bow and then to come back to where I started before. The same thing. So to break up that section chord by chord is not only helping me to develop the kind of movement I want in my right arm, but to keep that movement controlled so that I can execute this passage properly and not just be really sloppy about it. And so that's the large motor control. Now for more fine motor control, I have a section later on in this passage. So this section, I have to be very neat, precise, and as fast as possible in my left hand. Just doing this. So I have to keep everything contained, using very little of my bow, but then also making sure that my fingers are not doing too much motion, that they just do only the amount of motion that they need. And of course I would tackle this kind of a section in terms of my practice by just doing it very slowly. So that I can capture what kind of motor control I need, but for now at a slower tempo, so that I can process what I want my left hand to do and how to execute this passage properly. So with some practice over that, then I can do something like this. So again, developing the fine motor control in addition to the large-scale motor control that I had to do at the beginning of this passage. Another aspect of the brain that is especially crucial for string players is the corpus callosum. As we know, the corpus callosum relays information between the two hemispheres of our brain. And especially for string players, we need to have this area of our brain very developed in order to distinguish what is happening between our two hands. My two hands are doing very different things in terms of playing a musical instrument. My left hand is doing very precise movements and actually outlining the notes that I want to play, whereas my right hand with the bow is responsible more for the quality of the sound that I want to play. These two hands need to be coordinated. If they were not coordinated, then I could not play music cleanly, then it would be very sloppy. So I will demonstrate working this out in a practice session with actually the very beginning of my concerto that I'm playing. So as you can tell, I need to have the intensity within my left hand to match the intensity within my right hand. Not only that, but when I play the shorter notes, that also needs to be coordinated with the movement of my bow. So if I were to break apart what I'm doing in each hand, I can start with the right hand. So if it was just the right hand alone, I would be doing requires its own set of technique and skills to make sure that sounds well. And then if I just had my left hand, this is what I would be doing. So the intensity in my left hand matching the intensity in my right hand. But especially these notes need to be coordinated. So that means that the information relaying between my left hemisphere and my right hemisphere needs to go as quickly as possible and to have as many diverse routes as possible between the two hemispheres of my brain. So through development of my corpus callosum and just through practicing this section, I can get this passage more coordinated. So again, just another aspect of my brain that is involved not only with this passage, but basically with my years and years of playing. Again, for string players, we need to have this ability to coordinate between these two very different movements that's going on between our two hands. As musicians, in our practice session, we're always trying to do problem solving, figuring out what are the problem spots in our music and what techniques we can implement to make those sections better. This is utilizing our frontal lobe, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which is involved with executive functioning. So that involves strategizing, problem solving, event planning. So in order to execute a lot of this music, I need to make sure I'm planning for what's ahead, planning my arm movements, just how I'm reading the music, to all have that working out. So if I take a section that I had played for you earlier, I can just play for you first. So this section was okay, but again, I'm always thinking about how can I make it better. So one thing that I can try is slowing it down, again, having more time to hear through the notes. So one thing I noticed is that I'm letting up a little too much pressure on my bow after my 3-note slur. So on the last note, it's a little weak. So that's not what I want to do. I want to make sure I can sustain the bow all the way through the slur and continue that momentum into the separate notes. And to me, this sounds a lot better. It sounds clear and it has the momentum moving forward. Another thing that I'm always planning out is whenever I am shifting from one position on the cello to another position, planning out shifts is very important, and it's very difficult to make sure you can plan a shift and make sure that the new note that you are aiming for is going to be in tune. Again, back to the auditory processing. So one section that I'm always nervous about making sure I get the shift correct is this section. So that was actually okay. But if I wanted to break down what exactly the problem would be, it would be this section. So the very end of the measure. So again, I'm thinking, how can I fix it? Well, I could take the note that I'm shifting to, just kind of hold it, play it for a little bit. And I'm finding where in my arm it feels comfortable to play. So the position that my arm is in right now, that feels pretty comfortable. So then when I'm in the position that precedes it, I want to prepare my arm so that my arm is in the position that I want for when I shift. So when I go up to that shift, I'm already thinking about raising my arm so that when I shift, I will be in a comfortable position to execute the shift. So if I take that whole section again, So again, the problem's solved. And this is a big part of it due to just the functioning of my frontal lobe, the executive functioning, the problem solving, the event planning, strategizing in order to actually play the music well. One last aspect involved with playing a musical instrument that has unexpectedly been coming up in the research that's been done is activation of the occipital lobe, which, as we know, is responsible for visual processing. And this certainly makes sense with playing a musical instrument and just to have some sort of musical training and ability to read music. Music is its own language. It's amazing that I can be able to take what looks like dots and notes and symbols and sharps, flats, dynamics. All of this, it just looks like a bunch of black nonsense, but that actually makes sense to me. Like, I can understand pitches and rhythms and note values and to make music out of it. So certainly my occipital lobe is very much at work, taking in what I'm reading on the page and to process it, make sense of it, to interpret it as the music itself. And this certainly comes into play with sight reading. Sometimes you're just given music right on the spot, you've never looked at it before, and you're expected to read it and play it as well as you possibly can for the first time. This definitely requires much activation of our occipital lobe to visually take in as much information as we can very quickly, and then to process it, and again to interpret it and make sense of it into the music, even just on the spot. Now, considering all the aspects of the brain that we've gone over in this short practice session, now it's time to put them all together and to actually make music out of it. So I'm going to play this whole section for you, again incorporating these aspects of my brain while I'm doing it. So hope you enjoy it.